So this one's for Benny. I wanted to ask, like, have you ever dealt with microaggressions, and like, what advice would you give to somebody who has to deal with microaggressions?
This works, yes. Absolutely. I mean, I think I've been in the tech industry for about 15 years and it did not look like it does now. Yeah, it was even worse. So yes. I find this question difficult. It's not the first time I get it, but the reason why I find it difficult is because my instinct is fight back, which is obviously not necessarily the most productive thing. The diplomatic answer is it's an opportunity for education, but we also all know that's tiring and unfair. So I think what I do right now is I send memes that explain more eloquently than I can why what they just did to me was stupid and leave enough ambiguity that it could be taken as funny. Or I practice some little one-liners, the type that is funny, people will laugh, and that person will feel stupid and won't do it the next time. It's a bit convoluted. I don't think we nailed the algorithm for that situation yet. I really wish we would. Exclude them? No, that's absolutely not the right. Sorry. I hope it helped. I feel for you.
Thank you. It is difficult. Like, it happens to everyone, and you just want to know, like, I'm not alone. So,
how do you deal with microaggression? I mean, we're all.
Depends on how I'm feeling. Am I feeling like fighting back, or am I feeling like just let this one slide and punch a pillow or something instead?
How much do you think actually a microaggression is done on purpose, or someone just spits something out wrong and it sounds like it's a microaggression?
Well, that's the thing. Very often it's not done on purpose. Like most of the time it's not done with the intention of hurting. But it also doesn't mean that it's an accident. It's usually like a bad habit. And so, I mean, I have also said things like, I don't love that you just said that, and just walk away. It is something that ideally you would want to address. But one thing actually that I would say, I've personally often gone down the social justice warrior path and tried to change the mind of the people around me and try to make the company culture better and stuff like that. I commend people that still do that, but it's really tiring and it leads to burnout. I would say unless you're in a position of power, don't feel the need to, like if you feel up for it, sure. Otherwise, find someone else, because it shouldn't be your problem to deal with. Find HR, find your manager, talk to other people. That's probably the main thing. Just talk to other people, because there's safety in numbers.
Thank you.
I'll go for one question from Maris to Ellie. Given when then is a good naming convention when describing tests? Given when then convention comes from BDD, should developers learn more about BDD?
That's a really interesting question. So for those who don't know, BDD is behavior-driven development, which I had to remind myself for this because I'm always terrible with acronyms. Yeah, I've often found behavior-driven development useful for like things like writing tickets, because you can kind of be really clear on like, given that I'm a cat lover, I can use this app to get a picture of a cat so I can feel a little bit better about my day. And I think that in itself can then lead to making it a bit easier to write tests, because you've already got your test cases written down in front of you. So I think, it definitely doesn't hurt to learn a bit more about behavior-driven development. I say it just depends on whether it's something you find useful, whether it's something that people around you find useful. But I think it can, if you can, if you've got things like user stories and acceptance criteria, sometimes once you have that, that's your test case is already half done for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to go for another question for Ellie, given that we have it here. And you, do you want a break? I can jump onto another one if you want. Do you have an example of a complex component where you had to mock it out, since that was mentioned in the mocks list?
Ooh, I definitely do. I think at my last company, we have often a situation where we have this big parent component that everything else kind of comes out from. I remember a situation like that in my last company where there was just no choice when I came into that component. There was no way I could mock every single network call that children this probably told you something about the architecture, that maybe we shouldn't have had this, parent component with then children just going all the way down forever. But yeah, I think scenarios like that where you really had to think about 10 layers deep what APIs are being called, sometimes it is just easier to mock out that component. But yeah, it's something I try and avoid.
A question here also for Eva, which I lost in the meantime, but I'll find it. Just give me 1 second. So here we go. Best thing about Redux is the time travel and ability to capture actions in logs. In TIFL, how would you capture state changes for auditing logs?
Okay, so TIFL also has their dev tools, and they're really good, and you can check their everything, so you can see how the state is changing, when, who changed it, all the stack trace. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah, you can do it.
How close is TIFL to Context API?
TIFL is close to Context API, and I love Context API, but TIFL still is, I'm not sure I would say better, but there is this re-rendering issue if you have in your context, if you have more properties, and you have, for example, age and username or something else, and now you want just to change age, all the components that also have username will re-render, which is actually necessary while we are doing that. And then you can solve it in context by defining context for all the properties separately. But I think it's, taking you more time. You can, with TIFL, you can have the store with all the properties, and it will render only that part of the store. So I think it's a big plus. And also you don't have to have provider and consumer in TIFL, what you need in context. So it's still, I think it's more simple.
Okay. TIFL all the way.
Yeah.
You're definitely selling it well.
Thank you.
So we have here a question for Benny as well. Making assumptions and projecting them is always a risk. Yet, how to unlearn this practice?
Whoa, deep. So, first off, we can start with thinking that making assumptions and doing projections, again, it's human. It comes from survival instincts. So, yes, unlearning it is messy. I think that I studied acting for a while, and that was the time where I think I wrapped my head around it the most, because with acting, you have to temporarily completely set aside who you are and completely set yourself in the shoes of someone else, their motivations, their intentions, their words. It's literally not you, you're acting another person. And something does click when you have to quash your instinct to be you to portray another human. There's something about that. There's lots of exercises that actually come from the acting and drama world, but they're used in coaching and in training for leadership. It just starts with recognizing that it's difficult. It is difficult. It is hard. Otherwise we would be doing it already. So recognizing that it's hard but needed, it's an amazing first step. And then there's a ton of tools out there. I love going on Reddit and reading real life stories of people that are completely different from me, or watch them on TikTok because they're incredibly funny. So they are entertaining me while I'm learning a lot about these different perspectives that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. When you start accumulating that sort of, background of information, it becomes a little bit more natural to interpret what's in front of you differently. There's a quote from, what was it, Einstein, that's like, we can't solve problems with the same mindset we had when we created them. So yeah, deep, sorry.
We all had a moment like, oh, wow. Okay, well, let's go to the next question. Thank you, Benny. I'm actually going to make one to Ellie. It's kind of like the eternal dilemma when you're doing unit testing. When is the moment to stop? So you can do so much with React testing library. You can potentially test any single CSS row that is applied to a component to have style or to have attributes. There's so much potential in there. But it gets to a point in which continuing testing might not be, investing your time into doing it might not be the best way to invest it. So you need to kind of like set a boundary and say, that's the moment, that's enough. How do you determine that?
That's also deep.
Is it? Yeah.
Very...
Write a book or something.
Yeah, it's really going to depend on what it is you're trying to test. I mean, you mentioned like CSS styles. I never test my CSS styles, which I mean, I know some people might, but for me, it feels like it's not the best use of my time. Like maybe we can catch things like that with like screenshot testing, like regression tests. Like there are other tools that kind of work a lot better than checking specific CSS styles. You can use like code coverage tools that will just tell you, you've got 100% of your conditional branches tested. That's good. And that's, testing the JavaScript or the TypeScript or the React. Again, it doesn't cover the CSS. And that can usually be a good measure that, you don't go beyond 100%. Yeah, for me, it's just exhausting the flows. Like, for me personally, yeah, it's usually about logic. Like, that's why I'm doing the unit tests. It's what are the different inputs I get? What are the different outputs? But yeah, it's going to depend on what you're making. Like, I know, if you're doing like a mathematical function, do you test every single set of numbers you could possibly get in there? No, I tend to go with kind of the numbers at the very edge of the range you're expecting, whatever side of that, a number that seems like a very average case, and then a number that is maybe a little bit weird, like a little bit funky in some way. I can't think of a funky number, but I'm sure there are some. But yeah, usually you can get fairly broad coverage just by getting the very edges and kind of a couple around the middle. But yeah, it's kind of it's not so much a science the way I do it.
Okay, thank you. That's well explained. What else do we have here? Let me see. Oh, actually, this one is for you too. How do you use accessibility in selectors?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of like good stuff on this online that can probably explain it better than I can try and do it in words. But basically, the get by role selector that comes with React testing library, if I had a div that has an onClick function and I tried to say, oh yeah, get by role button that says give me a cat picture, and actually the button I think I'm talking about is just a div with an onClick, like that's not going to show up in my test because that element doesn't have the role button. So that's a really good one. Yeah, there's the like screen dot get by alt text. There are things like get by input. I don't know exactly. Get by label, get by input, get by label text. It's get by label text. But there are basically a few different selectors. I think React testing library docs spell out quite nicely. But yeah, you don't even have to be testing accessibility specifically. You're already getting it. Although there are also tools for specifically testing accessibility as well.
Actually, I'm going to read this one for Benny, which is kind of provocatory. In relation to the inclusivity talk, how are you enjoying this meetup where we have an all-female lineup?
Why do you do this to me? Do I respond it honestly or do I respond it diplomatically? I don't know. I'll answer it and then maybe you'll just, cut that bit if it's not okay. But I think if we want to strive for real inclusivity, there's a bit of correction that needs to be made first. So I've got personally no issue with the fact that we're still making some specific environment because we haven't had enough of those and we need to reset the culture a bit. I don't think that this will still be a thing in 5 years or 10 because if we did a good job, we won't need it. I have the same with neurotypes. There's so much labeling right now. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. Maybe I'm also dyslexic. Does it actually matter? Yes, because otherwise I don't get the right medicine. But should it? Probably no, because we should all just be taken as individuals. So it's like, this is fine right now. This is great right now. It's helping rebalance things. But I think it will naturally fizzle out. Or at least I hope so. Not for YLD. I mean, you guys are great. You can keep doing this forever. It's fine.
I'm not going to add anything to it because I think you could not have given a better answer to this question. So good job. There were another one for Iva. How does TIFO expose its state in the tree without provider? Through singletons?
Yeah, you don't need to have a provider with TIFO. You just need to create a store and use store hook or the helpers. I mean, you need to have your store hook and you need to create a store first and then you can use it through the app normally, yeah.
I have a question that is related to the testing as well, as you've mentioned accessibility and how there are tools that we can use to test out the accessibility of our app, like just using a screen reader. How do you feel, or how do you consider maybe, so let's say we have our component and we just defined everything from the area label and we just know that it's going to look good if maybe someone who's not able to use a keyboard uses our website. How do you handle this as well on your unit tests or on the test side of things as well? If we are, I mean, apart from using maybe a screen reader?
That's a really good question. So there are things like within testing libraries where you can run in your unit test, checking that there are no, I think it's the Accurx dev tools. And I'm looking at Sarah because I know she'll tell me if I'm wrong. Which will flag like if there are any accessibility violations in your tests. I don't know if that's the route I would always opt for in testing. I think I quite like the browser dev tools that you can get. So again, it's the Accurx, I believe it's Accurx. I can never remember the name of the companies that make things. Developer tools, which actually similar to like Redux dev tools or React dev tools or just Chrome dev tools. You can basically bring up the page you're working on, run this accessibility checker over it. It will tell you any warnings. It will tell you the severity of them, like things like your image doesn't have any alt text, it will flag, or things like your input doesn't have a label. And that's something that I've found really useful because while I'm testing what I'm working on, I'm also learning things that I didn't actually realize were accessibility violations or things that actually, there are some, I can't remember what it was the other day, but something came up and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was an accessibility issue, because I think we can get caught up kind of thinking about things like, oh, let's not put red and green next to each other, or, oh yeah, I should have some alt text, or, you know, like very basic ideas of accessibility. And so it's a good way to like learn as you go. But I think, the Accurx DevTools are one that I use. I don't know how you bake that into like a process at a company level. That's a question I would love the answer to. But that's how I bake it into my personal flow while I'm building new components.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to go for the very last questions I have here, which is to all of you. How did you get to do what you do?
In what sense?
To be a senior product designer, probably at Pearson's education tool. How did you get to you got to your career to do?
Okay. A bunch of luck.
We always need a bit of it, you know?
Yeah. I was open to opportunities when the opportunities came. That's where I pat myself on the back, but I've had a good series of opportunities. Networking.
You always wanted to do this, or you deviated throughout your career?
No, I deviated a bunch of times. I'm pretty sure that there was a time where I swore that I never wanted to manage anyone, and now it's all I want to do, because I had a really shit manager at some point and I just wanted to learn to do better. So, you know, like you take your inspiration, you pivot. I'm a big fan of portfolio careers lately. So rather than trying to follow a linear path, actually list out in your CV all of those other things that you do that contribute to your skill set, because they're all important. They all matter.
That's interesting because sorry for interrupting. I was talking to someone during the pizza break and they were like, oh, I have a lot of soft skills and other stuff, but I don't think they are taking into consideration. I'm like, no, that's not actually true. There's more and more people appreciating the fact that you have expanded skills on different sectors, or you have lived experiences other than specifically that one that is for the job you're applying for.
There's actually, I hire a bunch of people and I hate the format of CVs. It doesn't let me see what these people actually do, what they're actually good at. So it's something that I hope that as an industry, we can just completely refresh, because but back on the question, my latest job, for example, I had it because I was in a panel with someone. It was a neurodiversity panel. We hit it off really well, and then when he had a job opening, he called me. Hence why I'm like, luck and staying open and do a bit of soul searching, I guess. What do you actually like doing? Because could be that it's not the job you have, or not all parts of it, or not in that type of industry, or not in that type of company. And you can always pivot.
Okay, so my pet to hear was really random, because I think my parents were the one that were shocked the most when I told them after high school that I'm gonna go to study computer science, because I never knew anything about computers, but I'm not sure what to study. I told my dad, like, I love 10 colleges, but I cannot like choose one, because it's like I cannot. And the only thing that I knew then was that I wanna be able to travel and work, and I love that. And then I saw like IT, so maybe I can try this. But I never did programming before that, so it was just YOLO. Like, let's try this, and then I got stuck here, and I found a good company, and I really like it now.
Do you get to travel and work?
Yeah, all the time. So this is perfect.
It's actually what you wanted.
Yeah.
Nice one.
So in terms of getting into front-end engineering, I had quite a weird and windy route. So I did a completely unrelated degree, had a complete panic the summer after I graduated when I realized, oh God, what am I going to do with my life? I need to do something employable. Went, okay, I'll do computer science, because my dad kept going on about how he knew some really smart guys that did computer science and you could make good money. But I was like, okay, I need to move out of this house, so I guess I'll do that. So I did like a 1-year conversion course in computer science. I actually came out of that thinking I didn't want to be a developer. So I was doing Java, I was doing backend stuff. I didn't like it at all. So I came out and be like, oh God, no, I don't want to be a developer. And I don't want to work in a basement of some company. Like, I was thinking the IT crowd. But then I got a job in a, I would say like a very corporate company doing cybersecurity. thinking again, like, oh, maybe that'll be a cool and a good employable career. And I really didn't like that either. Really didn't get on with that at all. And I was kind of just doing some searching and kind of thinking, oh God, what do I do? Where do I go from here? Everyone I knew had graduated and got onto them. Be a developer, like using Java. And I was like, I can't do that. Then I thought back to, I used to like making like one page, like fully just HTML websites, just bright pink backgrounds, some Comic Sans, scrolling marquee, a photo that I could never position in the right place. And I thought, I kind of used to enjoy that. Why don't I see if I could do that kind of stuff? So in like the little moments I could kind of steal before and after work, I started playing around again with like HTML, CSS. Thought, okay, let's try JavaScript. Please don't be like Java, but with the word script on the end. Saw React, thought it was a cool word, and figured, okay, yeah, I'll try that one. From there was like, oh, yeah, I am having a good time. I am enjoying this. I was happy to wake up early. I mean, I wouldn't do it now, don't get me wrong, but I was happy at the time to wake up early in the morning to try and learn it. Yeah, I wouldn't code at 6 a.m. anymore, ever, for love or money. But yeah, and then spent a while searching for jobs, came across one it was very much by luck that I came across it. And then I think it was interesting what the note about kind of like soft skills and people maybe not appreciating them, because I think that was maybe what got me my foot in the door, was the fact I had, I didn't have any professional experience using JavaScript. I taught myself in like a month. But I think I had some of that experience from jobs I had done in the past, and kind of I could communicate, and I was just going to give it my best shot, and basically just got my foot in the door that way. And then from there, yeah, just kept going. And after the first year, I was like, well, this is great. I don't hate it, which is the first time in a while I've done something for a whole year and not hated it. So yeah.
So a bit of luck and strong will.
Yeah.
And passion at the end of the day.
And figuring out what you actually like.
Yeah. Which seems easy, but it's not. Because we're put through questions and decisions when we're really young. What do you want to do when you're going to be old? And you're like, who knows? I don't even know what are the options other than being a doctor, engineer, sells flowers at the flower shop. Then you're like, you need to decide now for forever. And you're like, go through life, and new things happen, new obstacles, new decisions. This goes wrong, this goes right. I actually like this, but I don't know how to do it. What am I going to do about it? But I mean, if you want it enough, or if you like it enough, it's doable with a bit of luck, of course, a bit of will, a bit of study, a bit of, can get there. So deep, isn't it? It's a deep set.
Very deep.
Okay, does anybody who wants to make some other question?
Oh, he does.
Who knows? Yes.
I think we can then close the question and answer session off and head to the pub, have a beer, well-deserved beer. But hold on, because I still have to say some things. You need to stand me for another couple of minutes. I can't remember what I have to say at the end, but yeah. I was going to say that.